Hello everybody and welcome back to Screen Stars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2020 comedy film An American Pickle, a film that is directed by Brandon Trost and it stars Seth Rogen as Herschel Greenbaum. Now this comedy initially is set in 1919 in Eastern Europe, in some random European country, where Seth Rogen plays Herschel Greenbaum, who lives a very poor life. He digs ditches for a living, and he gets a job working in a pickle factory when he finally moves to America with his sweetheart. And all he does in this pickle factory is basically batter rats, and he ends up falling in a jar of pickles. The factory shuts down almost immediately after, and he is pickled perfectly for the next 100 years and wakes up 100 years later in Brooklyn. And naturally the world has changed quite dramatically, and he has only one living relative left, his great grandson, who takes him in, tries to ease him into modern life, which doesn't go particularly well, and they actually end up being enemies. As Herschel heads out into the world to try and make it big in the world of pickles, shall we say. Right, so that's the basic story here. What was my thoughts on An American Pickle? Well, I am a big fan of Seth Rogen. I have said this before on this channel. I reviewed a number of his films, and he is among my favourite working comedy actors today. I think he is really talented, even though my understanding is I don't think he had anything to do with the writing of this. It may have been one of the producers, I'm not really sure actually. But what we actually get here is quite a quirky, different comedy. I mean, it's ridiculous beyond belief. It isn't to be taken seriously in any way, shape or form, this film, but it does actually play out pretty well, in the sense of it actually got some messages in there. Now hang on, don't lose interest. It's not one of those where it shoves it down your throat, these messages, and it does have things to say about race, religion, the outrage culture, the social justice warriors, but mostly it's actually a very centered tale about family. That's the core message here. Family, and no matter what generation you are from, if you like, blood is blood, and family is what matters, is the real message here. And they certainly go around the houses here to finally get to that message. But I certainly, what I took away from this film, is this film funny? Well, yeah, I thought it was funny. It's not belly laugh funny, it's more fish out of water story type funny. Imagine this Jewish guy whose main dream before he went into the pickles to be pickled for 100 years was to drink bubbly water, snitchel, something, whatever it's called, I'm not sure what it is. Essentially it's just sparkling water. That was his main dream, and then when he wakes up 100 years later and he is allowed into society. I mean, that in itself was ridiculous, how they presented that. He's presented at a news conference, and then nicely gloss over all that, and then he ends up living with his great grandson a couple of scenes later. I mean, he would literally be poked and prodded for the next 40 years in hospitals and stuff, wouldn't he, really? But it's a comedy, it's not meant to be taken seriously, as we know. But it's a fish out of water tale, and that's where most of the comedy comes from. The fact that he hasn't and can't and won't really, to some degree, adjust to this modern life. He says what he wants, he's got his beliefs from 100 years ago, and he's constantly getting in trouble for it. And there's some scenes in this film that show that. As I said, he actually becomes enemies with his great grandson for much of the film, and there's a great scene where his great grandson tries to convince him to go on Twitter because Twitter's the place to be if you want to get known and you want to be powerful, and you want to get your message across, and people respect you if you say what you mean on the platform like Twitter. And we all know Twitter is a cesspool full of social justice warriors, and the outrage culture just fester on Twitter. So he goes on there, Herschel, and makes an absolute tool of himself with the things that he says, his outdated beliefs and things. And he does it to him again later in the film. What's your thoughts on Christianity and stuff? And again, at a public meeting, he says what he thinks about that in regards to his 100-year-old beliefs. And again, it all goes terribly wrong. So it is funny, but most of the comedy, like I say, comes from his fish out of water experiences. But it's a decent enough. It's quite a gentle comedy. It's not going to rock your world. It's not really over the top. It's not overly rude. I'm trying to think, was there any swearing in this? No, I don't remember there being an awful lot of swearing in this. So it's a pretty laid back, chilled out movie for the most part. But it's a really nice chilled out watch, to be fair. A nicely put together film. It's got a real oldie worldly feel to the film. Not just the 100 year ago stuff, the modern day stuff as well. It's got like this nice look to the film as well. It's been nicely made. And I don't really know what else to say to you about it, really. I mean, it didn't blow me away or anything, this film, but I found it a pleasant watch. So a few chuckles in it, a ridiculous but interesting story, and I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. It's quite a quirky little comedy, this, and certainly worth checking out if it's interesting to you. So that's my review for An American Pickle. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching, and of course I will be back with more reviews on Screen Stars very, very soon.